in. So this week's Parsha is very highly disputed in this congregation. Half of you, most of you said, oh, Rabbi Kahn, you're wrong. It's Chukat. And I said, no. In Israel and in the Reform movement, it's Balak. And then people still said, you're wrong. My iPad says that it's Chukat. And I said, your iPad is wrong. Your iPad is right for the diaspora, but wrong for us. So all of this confusion is a very circuitous route to saying Ma Tovu, our opening song, is in this week's Torah portion, which contains not only Ma Tovu, but a talking donkey, and we just spent an entire hour talking about the talking donkey. So we will make mention of the talking donkey later, because you don't get that every week in Torah. All right, friends, let's begin on 192. There we go. Continue with the blessings for the morning, Nisim B'chol Yom 198 or page 80. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lasach vivina lavchin ben yom uvein laila, who has given the mind the ability to distinguish day from night. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivrim, who opens the eyes of the blind. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim, who frees the captive. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kefufim, who lifts up the fallen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam rokar etz al hamayim, who stretches the earth over the waters. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechim et tza'adei gaver, who strengthens our steps. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malbish arumim, who clothes the naked. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hanoten layav koach, who gives strength to the weary. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hama'avir sheina me'enai numa me'afapai, removes sleep from the eyes, slumber from the eyelids. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani b'tselem Elohim, who made me in the image of God. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani ben chorin, who has made me free. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shasani Yisrael, who has made me a Jew. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, ozer Yisrael bigvura, who girds Israel with strength. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, oter Yisrael betifara, who crowns Israel with splendor. Let's all turn to Kehilah Kedoshah, 224 or 106. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba, be'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon v'yomechon, uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, Bagala, Bagala, Ubizman Kari Vimru, Amen. Yeheshme Rabba Mevorach, Leolam Leomei Amaya, Yitbarach, Yitbarach, Vishtabach, Vipar Vitraman Vitnase, Vitadar, Vitale, Vitalal, Shmei Dekutsha Brichu, Leolam Kol Berchata Vashirata, Tushbechata v'nechemata, Damiran be'alma v'imru. Amen. Let's all stand together for Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu et Adonai hamevorach. Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, yotzer or uvarei choshech, v'osei shalom uvarei et hakol, hameir la'aretz v'ladarim aleha barachamim, uvtuvo mechadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reshit. Ma rabu ma'asecha Adonai, kulam b'chochma asita, ma'ah ha'aretz kinyanecha, titbarach Adonai Eloheinu al shevach ma'aseh yadecha, ve'al me'orei or she'asita, Yafa Arucha Sela, or Chadash al Tzion Ta'ir, V'nizkei Chulmanu Mehera La'oro, Baruch Atah Adonai Yotzer HaMe'orot. Let's all read together on the top of page 231 or 113 in the English. Once or twice in a lifetime, a man or woman may choose a radical leaving, having heard Lech Lecha, go forth. God disturbs us toward our destiny by hard events, by freedom's now urgent voice, which explode and confirm who we are. We don't like leaving, but God loves becoming. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher ba'amo Yisrael be'ahava. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Leolam Va'ed. Please be seated. Let's continue with V'ahavta 234, 116. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, b'chol lebavcha, b'chol nafshecha, u'b'chol me'odecha, V'hayu hadvarim ha'eleh asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'lechtecha v'derech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha Shartam leot ayadecha vayuletotafot beinenecha uchtaftam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tizkeru vasitem et kol mitzvotai vitem kedoshim leloechem ani Adonai Elohechem Asher hotzeiti etchem meretz Mitzrayim liot lachem laElohim Ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem emet. Let's all join together on the left side of 241 or 123. And then we'll sing Micha Mocha. The good in us will win over all the wickedness, over all the wrongs we have done. We look back at the pages of written history and be amazed, and then we will laugh and sing. And the good that is in us, children in their cradles will have won. Our hearts beat with certainty that there is a day and an hour and a mountain called Zion, and that all the sufferings will gather there and become song, ringing out into every corner of the earth from end to end, and the nations will hear it, and like the caravans in the desert, will all to that morning throng. Yam bam bam bim bim bam, yabba ba ba bim bam, yam bam bam bim bim bam, yabba ba ba bim bam, I di di di, yabba ba ba bim bam, I di di di, yabba ba ba bim bam, mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, Norah tehilot osefelet, Norah tehilot osefelet, shira chadasha shibchu geulim, לשמחה, לשמחה, על שפת הים. יחד כולם הודו והמלכו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ים בם, בם, בים, בים, בם, יבא בא, בא, בים, בם. ים בם, בם, בים, בים, בם, יבא בא, בא, בים, bam. I di di di, yabba ba ba bim bam. I di di di, yabba ba ba bim bam. Zur Yisrael, kuma be'ezrat Yisrael, uvdechenu mecha, Yehuda ve'Yisrael. Go aleinu, Adonai tzvaot shemo, Kedosh Yisrael, Baruch atah Adonai, Gal Yisrael. We're now at the Amidah, page 242 in your Sudarim. Together, please stand. Adonai sefatai tiftachu fi agi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibur v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Ve'konei Hakol, Ve'zocher Chasdei Avot ve'imahot, Lumevi Geula Livnei Bneihem, Leman Shemo B'Ahava, Melech Ozer Moshiach Umagen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Bezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayei Hakol Acharav Lehoshia, Morid Hatal, Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, Mechayei Hakol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Berofei Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Michamocha Bal Givurot, Umido Melach, Melech Mimit Umechaye, Umatzmiach Yeshua, Bnei Talachayot HaKol, Baruch Atah Adonai, Mechayei HaKol. Nikadesh et Shimcha ba'olam, Keshem shemakdishim oto bishmei marom, Kakatuv vayad neviecha, V'karaz el ze ve'amar, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzevaot, Meloch ol haaretz, Kevodo. Adir, Adirenu, Adonai, Adonenu, Madir Shimcha, B'chol haaretz, Baruch Kevod Adonai, Mimkomo. Echadu Eloheinu, Hu Avinu, Hu Malkeinu, Hu Moshienu, Ve'u Yashmienu, Berachamav le'enei kol chai. Ani Adonai Elohechem, Yimloch Adonai le'olam, Elohai Tzion, Ledor vador. Hallelujah. Ledor vador nagid godlecha, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. Please be seated. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג. עם מקדשי שביעי כולם ישבעו ויתענגו מטובך, והשביעי רצית בו וקידשתו, חמדת ימים אותו קראת זכר למעשה בראשית. Let's all read together in the middle of, let me move this so I don't trip on it again. Middle of 252, the special blessing for today, for Shabbat. Our God and God of our ancestors, be pleased with our rest, sanctify us with your mitzvot, and grant us a share in your Torah, satisfy us with your goodness, and gladden us with your salvation, purify our hearts to serve you in truth. Gracious love, Adonai our God, grant us your holy Shabbat as a heritage. May Israel, who sanctifies your name, rest on Shabbat. Blessed are you, Adonai, who sanctifies Shabbat. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. Ritzeh Adonai Eloheinu ba'amcha Yisrael, tfilatam ba'ava tekabel et l'ratzon tamid avodat Yisrael amecha. El karov l'chol kor'av pnei el avdecha v'chonenu, shfoch ruchecha aleinu v'techezenu b'shucha l'tzion barachamim. Baruch atah Adonai hamachazir shechinato l'tzion. Let's all read together middle of 256 or 138. We acknowledge with thanks that you are Adonai, our God, and the God of our ancestors forever. You are the rock of our lives, the shield of our salvation in every generation. Let us thank you and praise you for our lives, which are in your hand, for our souls, which are in your care, for your miracles that we experience every day, and for your wondrous deeds and favors at every time of day, evening, morning, and noon. O good one, whose mercies never end, O compassionate one, whose kindness never fails, we forever put our hope in you. For all these things, O sovereign, let your name be forever praised and blessed. O God, our Redeemer and Helper, let all who live affirm you and praise your name in truth. Blessed are you, Adonai. Your name is goodness, and you are worthy of thanksgiving. 258 or 140. Sim shalom tova uvracha chen b'chesed v'rachamim berachamim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael amecha barcheinu yotzreinu kulanu ke'echad be'or panecha Ki vor panecha natata lanu Adonai Eloheinu, sim shalom, tova uvracha, chen b'chesed v'rachamim berachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael amecha, Torat chaim v'avat chesed, ve'avat chesed, Utzdaka uvracha v'rachamim v'chaim v'shalom. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Chen v'chesed v'rachamim berachamim aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael amecha, ve'tov be'einecha levarech et amcha Yisrael bechol etu v'chol sha'a bishlomecha. Sim shalom, Lom tova uvracha, chen b'chesed v'rachamim berachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael amecha. Baruch atah Adonai, hamvarech et amo Yisrael b'shalom. Praised are you, Adonai, who blesses your people Israel with peace. And now with some peace and quiet, let's enjoy and take in and meditate on this beautiful Shabbat. It's hot out there, but it's cool in here. And it's Shabbat, and we're together. What could be better? So let's just have a moment for our own silent prayers and meditations. right, 362, Seder Kriyat Torah, or 244. Ein kamocha v'Elohim Adonai, ve'ein kema'asecha, malchutecha malchut kol olamim, u'memshaltecha bechol dor v'dor. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai imloch leolam va'ed. Adonai oz le'amo yitain, Adonai varech et amo v'shalom. Please stand. Av harachamim heitiv avirtzoncha et Zion. Tivnei chomot Yerushalayim. Tivnei chomot Yerushalayim. Ki vecha levad batachnu. Melech el ram benisa Adon olamim. Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, U'devar Adonai mirushalayim. 366. Baruch shenatan Torah Torah. Baruch shenatan Torah Torah le'amo Yisrael b'kedushato. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonenu Kadosh Shemo. Gadlu Ladonai iti uneromema Shemo yachdav. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu veishtachavu el har kodsho. Romemu Adonai. Shabbat Shalom. You want to kiss the Torah? No, not today. It's good. I'm with you. El har kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. All right. Okay, please be seated. Now let's see if the cantor left it at last week's portion or if he rolled it for us. There you have it. There's your answer. Okay, we are going to read from Balak again, which can be found in your Cloud commentaries, if you have one, on 1050. And if you're following along at home, you just have a plain old Bible, which is totally fine. We are chapter 22 of Numbers, beginning with verse 2, 22:2. I will bless the Torah, on everyone's behalf today once I find the yod. Oh, I left it over here. Very good. Baruch hu et Adonai hamborach, Baruch Adonai hamborach le'olam va'ed, Baruch Adonai hamborach le'olam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et torato, Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah. Amen. Vayar Balak ben Tzipor et kol asher asa Yisrael le'emori. Balak, the son of Tzipor, saw everything that the Israelites had done in the land of the Amorites. Vayager Moav mipnei ha'am me'od ki ravhu vayiketz Moav mipnei b'nei Yisrael. Moab was frightened, I guess is the best way to say it. They were fearful in the face of this very, very me'od people, this very large, numerous group of Israelites. Vayomer Moab el ziknei Midian. So Moab said to the ziknei, the elders of Midian, Ata yelachachu hakahal et kol sevivotainu kilchoch, hashor et yerek hasadeh. This big group of people, they said to the elders, will lick clean all that is about us, just like an ox licks up the grass of the field. Like they're just going to consume everything. Jews have a good appetite. What can I say? Uvalak ben Tzipor melech leMoav, Balak, the son of Tzipor, the king of Moab, as previously mentioned. Ba'etahi. He was the king at that time, at Be'etahi, at that particular era, time period. Vayishlach malachim el Bil'am. And he sent malachim, emissaries, to find the famous or infamous, depending on how you want to look at it, Bil'am. Ben Be'or Petorah, Asher al Hanar, Eretz b'nei Amo, Likrolo, Lomar, Hine, Am Yatsa Mimitzrayim, Hine, Kiseh, Et Ein, Haaretz, Vehu Yoshev Mimuli. And the message that they're to give to Balaam is as follows. There's this people, they came out of Egypt, they're numerous, they're mighty, there are too many of them, they're going to eat up all of our food, so on and so forth. I can't defeat them and drive them out of the land. I need you to come and curse them so that they will disappear. Of course, the exact opposite happens, but nonetheless, one can try. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Please stand for just a moment so that we can lift and redress the Torah. And then you will notice I am rolling it to next week's Parsha for the cantor. Isn't that courteous of me? Cantor, is that nice? It helps. It helps, especially as my vision dims in my elder state. Okay, here we go. Vezot haTorah asher sa Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai biyad Moshe. It's funny, I grew up at an Orthodox day school, and we were conservative Jews, but went to the shul all the time, and they had one of those really cool Sephardic stand-up Torahs. And you would always see them rolling it ahead, and I always thought, oh, they're in a hurry to get to next week. But I don't forget, in the afternoon of Shabbat, observant Jews read Torah in the afternoon service, but they read next week's Torah. So they read maybe one aliyah, one chunk of next week's Torah portion. So that's why they were rolling it ahead. So I've never had an issue with rolling ahead. It's not like I'm in a rush to get there. It's just the way we do things. But I didn't realize that until a few years ago that that's why I was doing that. It's because that's what I saw when I was a kiddo. All right, let's put our Torah over in our Torah holding area. Please be seated. So the part of the portion that I wanted to focus on that we did not get to at Torah study this morning is this great act of great zealotry at the end of this week's parsha. We often skip it because we run out of time doing all the talking donkey stuff. And we never save room for this really interesting massacre that takes place at the end of the Torah portion, and maybe discussing our, ambivalence about such matters, or our support of such matters, depending on how you look at things. But we know that religious zealotry is alive and well, not only in our country, but in our world. And we know that religious zealotry typically doesn't turn out very well for the Jews. And then we all have our own little, how do I put this? We all have our little dogmas and things that we are personally zealous about. But let's look at the parsha. If you go to the end of, toward the end of Balak, and we are now on page 1060, and we are chapter 25, verse 1. I'm sorry, 1059. And if you need an extra book, we have some in the back if you'd like to follow along. Would you like to follow along? No, I got to scoop. I have to make sure I have my backup. Otherwise, not a problem. Oh, look at this. From my childhood, the Hertz Chumash. Look at that. Huh. Someone's bar mitzvah. I got to figure out whose this is. Reuven Garinevrig. All right, well, someone got this as a bar mitzvah gift. And, oh no, I'm using the Hertz. I'm kicking it old school. But you guys can use the Plout. You can hear a lot. You're going to hear a lot of thous, thys. Oh, very cool. Okay. So, see, when you do this for a career, these are the little things that get you excited. Like, ooh, I found my book. Like, this is what I learned from my bar mitzvah, this particular edition. And I have one in my office, actually, but it's my brother's. I stole his. All right, where did I say we were? Chapter 25, right? 25. Okay, so now I got to go find it. Taking me a little longer. A lot of commentary in the Hertz. Here we go. All right, does someone want to read a little bit the first part? Starting with the Israelites dwelled in Shittim. Anyone? Okay, let's stop right there. So, pretty self-explanatory. Israelites, Midianite women. Oh, Shittim, this place Shittim, where is that? This is their last stop before they enter the Promised Land. So they're going to be in Shittim and the steppes of Moab for the remainder of Torah. So that's their last stop. What do you do when you enter a city? What's usually toward the front of the town? The brothel. Just like in Game of Thrones. Same scenario. And it's not just a brothel, but the rabbi suggests that this is a group of people that have been influenced also by people like Balaam, right? We're going to get to false prophets later, like the prohibition against false prophets. These aren't even false prophets. These are false gods. Idol worship, not good, right? So these Israelites go and they commit harlotry, is what my translation says. Harlotry with the daughters of Moab. And they called the people there and they sacrificed their gods. And Israel joined himself, the Israelite joined himself into the Baal of Peor, and God gets very upset and says, go shmice them, right? Okay. I'm going to go back to the other translation so that we're not totally off. But someone else want to continue? So Moses goes and assigns people to take care of business. Who wants to read? Just read. Or I'll do it. Okay. I'll do it since everyone's shy today. I'm not shy. Okay. Where are we? Thank you. Just then, at that moment, one of the Israelite men came and brought a Midianite woman over to his companions, and in the sight of Moses and the entire household of Israel who were there weeping at the entrance of the tent of meeting, when Pinchas, the son of Eleazar, son of Aaron, so this is, Pinchas is the grandson of Aaron, right? Saw this, he left the assembly, leaves the tent of meeting or wherever they are, takes a spear in his hand, followed the Israelite into the chamber with the woman, and stabbed both of them, the Israelite and the woman, through the belly. All right, so zealots. Is he a zealot or is he just a keeper of the law? Pinchas, Moses, God's astonishingly consistent anger at the Israelites. Like, this is the angry God section of Torah. Well, Numbers, there's a lot of kvetching. And so, Moses is going to hit the rock, and the people are going to yell at him, and then you've got Korach, and you've got Pinchas, and you've got all of the shenanigans going on. Meanwhile, Balaam is now blessing the Israelites, yet at the end of this parsha, we have this very bizarre incident, like the donkey wasn't bizarre enough. We have this bizarre incident. So what is this about? What is this here to teach us about our religious convictions, or about when we cross the line to the point where we get a spear in the belly?
It seems to me that he was sanctioned because the one Pinchas was in the line of the high priest. So it's not just like some guy who shows up and does this. I mean, this is...
Right. But the priests typically didn't do or commit acts of violence, right? He's not his grandfather. Aaron would have probably let it go. I mean, at the sin of the golden calf, he kind of lets them do it, right? So he's definitely not his grandfather, but maybe there is a priestly responsibility in that these guys are doing rituals that are illegal and wrong, and I have to put an end to it by making an example or killing them. Interestingly enough, spoiler alert, if you look at the next week's parsha, which happens to be called Pinchas, we learn that Pinchas, the son of Eleazar, very beginning, has turned back my wrath from the Israelites by displaying among them his passion for me. That's what they call zealotry, his passion, so that I did not wipe the Israelites away. Therefore, I grant him my pact of friendship. He gets the Brit Shalom, which this translates as friendship, but it's really the Brit, or the covenant of peace. But he does something very not peaceful, right? Are you with me here? He's killing this guy, right or wrong, whether he had the authority to do it, and yet he's given this Brit Shalom, this covenant of peace. Again, that's next week's parsha. We shouldn't go there yet. What else is this about? Yeah.
Going back to chapter 25.
Yes, ma'am.
Verse 8, then the fight against the Israelites was checked. Does that mean it was stayed, it was ended?
The elder, where are you?
Verse 8.
Oh, I'm in the wrong, let me get there, hold on. I was looking at 22 for some reason. Yes, he followed the Israelite into the chamber and stabbed both of them, the Israelite and the woman, through the belly. Then the plague against the Israelites was checked.
Check. What does it mean
offset. So instead of demolishing everyone at once, this act of physical violence to end something appeases, if you will.
So it says in the following verse, those who died of the plague numbered 24,000.
Right.
So all these people have died of the plague. This seemed to remediate that.
Well, it doesn't, though, because it says that they had died. And if you look at the commentary from Plout, apparently ravaging the camp as a divine punishment, some say it preceded the sin. So there's this question of chronology, if you will. Did they all die of the plague? They were dying of the plague. Pinchas kills the guy, and the plague stops. Or was the plague before the sin? Or was it after the, what Plout's basically doing is he's saying it's a gimme. I don't know if that's the right term, but it's a gimme. Like, it could be or it could be. We don't really know. But this act of appeasing, this idea is not bothering you, that we appease our God by murdering, killing, whether it's acceptable or not. Like, you got this one guy who's also a spiritual leader. Like, you wouldn't like to see your rabbi in a fight, right? You wouldn't want to see me commit an act of violence. If you saw me doing many other things, maybe even eating treif, you would judge. But to see a rabbi commit an act of violence, to see the priest, the grandson of Aaron, so easily, again, it goes back to Game of Thrones. Everything goes back to Game of Thrones. It's just very much like it's very medieval. And this is our God? This is problematic. Make the argument. Think about it.
Sometimes in some of these stories, taking the interpretation out of context, we don't have all the information, so we're coming to conclusions based upon limited information.
Well, welcome to Judaism. You do have all the information. It's right here. No, it is all of the information. The Torah tells you everything you need to know. You just haven't figured it out. We haven't figured it out yet, right? The Torah's got everything in there. But yes, you're right. When you have to throw in the commentaries, and you have to throw in the midrash, and you have to throw in the other rabbinic teachings and lessons in order to make some sense of it. Anyone else have an idea to share? So here's what I think. I think zealotry is a necessary evil in Torah because of two things. Number one is we know that these kids of Israel are still slaves. Like, they still have that slave mentality. They're still struggling, the entire book of Numbers especially, with the slave mentality. They have that mindset. And the zealotry works, if you will, in this context, because in order to get the next generations into shape, you have to show that there are consequences for certain behaviors. So it's one thing to engage with a prostitute, it's another thing to then adopt their idol worshiping, right? Like, there's a line. And what God is attempting to do, and I don't even know if I agree with this myself, but I'll say it, is to make a statement that in order to get rid of evil, you have to get rid of it. In other words, you can't just attack cancer with one chemo treatment or one pill or one radiation treatment. Typically, there are many of them. And then there's testing, and then we see if we're in remission, right? It's a process. It's a brutal process. Similar, I think, in Torah, there is this uncomfortable subject of there is a time and a place to eliminate evil. How do we do it? Do we do it with the full force of the plague and what Pinchas does, the act of Pinchas, or do we do it by being more passive and trying to, rationalize things with people? I think in order to get the behaviors changed, which we know never ultimately change, just read the prophets, the Israelites need to be challenged with some very harsh realities. If you do X, then Y may happen. Now, I don't believe today that this kind of zealotry is obviously in a democracy appropriate, but I also don't think it's appropriate because it's used typically on the downtrodden, on the poor, on the weak. In other words, if you think about in countries throughout the world where people are persecuted by the theocracy, by the state church or mosque, you can see the people who are getting tortured and executed and killed by the zealots are typically not the upper echelons of the community. And it's done very manipulatively, and it's done simply to scare people. So we have to struggle with this. When is it appropriate? When is it not appropriate to enact fierce punishment? And then how do we understand our God of compassion and rachamim, who also attacks and tells people to go kill people and makes plagues happen because God gets so mad? And why is God so angry all the time in Numbers? It's God. Like, God should know. These are difficult people, right? We have a stiff neck. Anyway, so some thoughts for this Shabbat. Meandering thoughts, albeit something to think about and nosh on, because whenever we say, oh, God's only good and perfect and whatever, I think there are some flaws in the system that we need to acknowledge. Last two comments, yeah.
One thing that was curious to me, it says the bad person is a notable, not somebody who's just there. It's a notable person. So maybe that makes a difference to what happened.
Because it's a person of status. Interesting. Steve.
Sometimes in a modern translation or a modern thought, we say God is actually looking away from what's happening.
Yes, hiding.
We're in a situation of a battle and a war, and you have two sides, and one is evil and one is good in your eyes, and they're both slaughtering each other. I mean, the snipers are going, and
It's ugly.
and someone said, well, how can God countenance that? Well, you say, well, God's looking away. God is
Right.
not in the hearts of each one of these
Right.
people. So
A great rabbi teacher, still alive, Yitz Greenberg, taught Holocaust, and he would always say, sometimes the evil is so great, God disappears. And I think that's kind of what you're saying. It's this idea of the hidden God, that God can't exist when there's that much evil, which is also a challenging question, right?
there was a commentary in the Jewish news last night, and the rabbi said, that's when faith really appears. In other words, he said, at the creation of the world, well, you don't need faith for that because God's the only one that could actually do the creation.
Right.
So therefore, that's an example of God. But if you have these situations where, God forbid, they're so horrible,
Yeah.
that's when you need faith, because what's the definition of faith? Belief in God when it's absolutely unbelievable.
When it doesn't seem like God could be there, right? But yeah. Okay. Excellent work, people. We are going to not chant Haftorah, but I do want to make mention that the Haftorah for Balak comes from the book of Micah, and chapter 5, and you're welcome to, of course, read that on your own. But we are going to continue and return the Torah to the Aron HaKodesh and conclude our service. So if everyone would be so kind as to turn to, where am I? Page 374 or 256, please stand. Yehalelu et Shem Adonai ki nizgav Shemo levado hodo al eretz b'shamayim vayaren kerem amo tehila lechol chasidav v'ivnei Yisrael Am kerovo, hallelujah, hallelujah. Etz chaim hi lemachazikim ba, v'tomcheha meushar. deracheha, darkei noam, v'chol netivoteha, shalom. Hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva Chadesh Yameinu Chadesh Yameinu kekedem. 586 or 282. Aleinu l'shabeach l'Adon hakol, latet gudula leotzeh breshit, shelo asanu kugoyei aratzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'goralenu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, umishtachavim umodim, lifnei melech, malchei hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, She'unot Shamayim ve'yoser haaretz, U'moshav yikaro b'shamayim ima'al, U'shchinatu zo, Begov meromim, Hu Eloheinu ein od, Emet malkeinu efesulato, Kakatuv betorato, v'yadatayom v'hashevota elevavecha, ki Adonai huwa Elohim, b'shamayim imal, ve'al haaretz, mitachat einod, V'nemar v'yadonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. On this Shabbat, we share our deepest sympathies as we note the passing of the following people who were recently laid to their eternal rest: Dr. Murray Hollenberg, Jim Andrews. On the Shabbat, we recognize and remember and recall those of our congregational family whose yahrzeits occur this week. Their names have been lovingly listed in our Shabbat flyer. If you wish to say out loud the name of a loved one, whether here in person or online, you'd like to type in the name of a loved one you would like us to think of before Kaddish, please do so. Zichronehem levracha, may all of their memories be for a blessing. For those in mourning, Kaddish 598. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol Beit Israel, ba'agala v'zman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mevorach le'olam u'le'almei almaya, yiparach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, V'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmei dekudsha brichu. Le'elah min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the source of peace and peace to all who mourn, and comfort to those who are grieving. Amen. Ein Kelohenu, 626, or 322. And I'm sorry, they didn't set up the challah and the grape juice. I don't know why, but I'm on it. As soon as Shabbat's over, I'm going to send a nasty email to someone. No, I'm not. I'll be a zealot. Over challah, maybe. Maybe over challah. Ein Kelohenu, ein Kadonenu, ein Kemalkenu, ein Kemoshienu, mi Elohenu, mi Chadonenu, mi Chemalkenu, mi Chemoshienu, Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adonenu, Nodel Malkenu, Nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu. Shabbat Shalom. And welcome from Tucson. We're glad you were here. Now you can drive up to Prescott and see Seth.